So I just want to make sure. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pamela Whitley, and I am a member of the Baton Rouge Sigma chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for a webinar. This is a webinar that is designed to create an informed community about the proposed amendments to the Louisiana Constitution. We have some guests that I will introduce shortly, but first I'd just like to thank everybody for their time and for their interest in becoming informed about these topics. We'll start with a prayer from Dr. Leah Raby.
Good evening, everyone. The Bible says in James, the first chapter, the 5th verse, the New King James Version, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Gracious and all-knowing God, we pause in this moment with hearts full of gratitude, acknowledging your presence in this space, thanking you for bringing us together in unity and purpose. Lord, we ask for your divine wisdom to rest upon each of us today. Grant us increased knowledge and deep understanding. As we share ideas, listen to diverse voices, and seek solutions that uplift and empower. Let our words be guided by truth, our thoughts be shaped by clarity, and our intentions rooted in compassion and integrity. We humbly ask for your unmerited favor that brings insight where there is confusion, cooperation where there is division, and progress where there may be delay. May your grace open doors, soften hearts, and position us to be agents of positive change in our communities and beyond. Bless every participant, speaker, and listener. Let this forum be fruitful, impactful, and guided by your light. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce our chapter president, Dr. Ernest Singleton. She'll give us a welcome for the afternoon. So, our president, can you please welcome everybody? And thank you for your time and your dedication to bringing this information to the community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitley. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about the 2025 constitutional amendments. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has been on the front lines of social action since 1913, and the Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter, with a membership of over 300 members, continues that work. With this webinar this evening, we do hope that you take something from this and that you exercise your right to vote either during the early voting period or on Election Day on March 29th. I know that this is important to me. I am a caregiver for my mom, and she received her ballot. And so I am going to be out of town on March 29th. So I know that I am going to go early vote. So this webinar comes just in time so that when the early voting opens on March 15th, I can go take her ballot and I can vote as well during that time period. So I am going to be tuned in and listening so I know how to cast my ballot with regard to these constitutional amendments. I want to thank our social action leadership, as well as our state social action coordinator, to making sure that we are always doing what is right and just for our community. Welcome, and we look forward to engaging with you all this evening.
Thank you. So we have with us the Delta Sigma Theta Southwest Regional Louisiana State Social Action Coordinator. And her name is Tanya Bolden Ball. I'm going to turn the floor over to her so she can bring some words and offer a charge to each of us and those in the community. And what I will say today is we have some listening, but we want the word to spread. So be sure and share this information with your family and friends and everybody that you touch so that we'll have an informed community. So Tanya, over to you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Singleton, and Michelle for the invite. My charge is simple. My charge for all of you all, because what we do as Social Action for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Social Action is our vehicle on everything that we do as pertains to advocacy. So I'm going to leave you with 3 simple A's: acknowledge, apply, and advocate. First A, acknowledge. Please acknowledge that we always will have work to do. We cannot afford to become complacent, regardless of if you're not familiar with what the ballot is at hand. We will always have work to do. The second A is apply. The knowledge that you're going to obtain this evening, I am encouraging all of you all to apply. How do you apply? Tell a friend to tell a friend. You know, in my church, we hear repeatedly, tell a neighbor, turn to your neighbor. I need for you to turn to your neighbor, call your neighbor, text your neighbor, DM your neighbor, whatever it may be. Make sure you tell your neighbor, whether you talk to them or not, make sure you tell your neighbor. And finally, the third A, advocate. Advocate with a relentless spirit. Upon the legacy of our ancestors, we must stand. Then we also must continue to pray, pursue, and promote the agenda of our communities. I am the oldest of a family of 2. My father is the son of a sharecropper, and my dad, we have the conversation all the time. We cannot afford to grow weary, even though we may grow weary. But for in due season, we shall reap if we faint not. So attendees, I am asking all of you all, we saw the writing on the wall, but guess what? Our pencils have been resharpened and we have a new eraser. So I encourage you all, encourage people to make sure they vote early. Make sure not only do they vote, but they bring someone with them. Now is not the time to be silent. So again, acknowledge, apply, and advocate, because we have work to do. Thank you so much, Baton Rouge Sigma, for giving me the opportunity, and I will see you all at the polls. Y'all take care.
Thank you. So before we get started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, and to kind of keep us going, I would like each of them to give us one item on the legislative agenda that they think we should all pay close attention to this year. So a lot happens in the legislature. A lot of times we see it passing in the news, but we don't get to have interactive conversations. And the one thing I know about our representatives is they are keeping a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot of information, a lot of data, and they don't get to share in depth a lot of what's going on and what we should listen to. So after you introduce yourself, please give us one thing to watch that you think our community should pay attention to and be aware of. So I will start with our state representative, Vanessa LaFleur. If you can introduce yourself and give us your item.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for the invitation to be here and share with everyone this evening. I am, as you stated, state representative for District 101 here in the capital city. And, you know, it's hard to say one, but I will stick to the assignment, Sister Pam. And I want us to pay close attention to what's happening in the Appropriations Committee, what is happening sort of in our education committees. I want us to pay close attention to how we're funding early childhood education, how we're funding education in general, how money and things are being sort of moved around. And as we do that, I'm rolling this back into the one, pay real close attention to the DEI rollbacks that are happening and try and figure out where we can make changes legislatively.
Thank you. I will next go to State Representative Joy Walters.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Joy Walters. I am a state representative here in the Shreveport, Louisiana area. I'm thankful to Baton Rouge Sigma for extending this invitation to me tonight. And Brother LaFleur is right. It's hard to choose, but I would say the one piece of legislation that we definitely need to pay attention to is using prisoners for disaster labor, and not wanting to pay the real price of what it would cost to have someone to administer disaster relief. And so we know that this state has an extensive history of mass incarceration, and it is not slowing down. And so we definitely need to pay attention to that so we can speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I've learned a lot already. Next, I'll go to the president of the NAACP, the Louisiana State President. He told me to just call him Mike. So, Mike, if you will introduce yourself and tell us, one thing you think is important that we pay attention to this year.
Again, good afternoon, everyone. It's always great to be a part of these moving deltas, man. I'm telling you, call me, I'm answering, But my sister Vanessa is an AKA, so I work with anybody who is going to push our agenda as Black folk, and so clearly we're in Louisiana, and we have to watch out anytime they gather together. There's more than two of them at any point in time. We got to be watching them because they're up to no good. As the state representatives already talked about, education, because once the federal government cuts education, it's going to be a trickle-down effect because they're already trying to charterize and privatize the education system. One way to get us all to reeling is to have our kids uneducated. It is not an option. So we have to watch them in their educational pursuits, but also when they start to say, I want to start killing people, the death penalty road, put it back out there for them to start slaughtering us, randomly, indiscriminately. So we have to watch those two things, I would like to say too. But I'm glad to be a part of this panel. I thank you all for inviting me. Anytime you invite me, I hope to be of service to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see the state senator Duplessis yet. He did say that he would be a little late, so we will go ahead and get started. What I'd like to do, there are 4 amendments, proposed amendments to the Louisiana Constitution. And I'd like to really start by saying, it's been a very long time since Louisiana has opened up its constitution for big change. I asked that question of the panel before, and they said the last time we had a big amendment change like this was in the 70s. So what I'd like to do is to ask the representatives to talk a little bit about the process of even getting this language drafted. So what did that look like? Why did we think these things were ready for change, and how did that actually happen in terms of getting words on paper? So I'll start with Vanessa, if you want to kind of give us a take on what that looked like inside of the Capitol.
Sure. It looks like a fight. Let me start there. And it looks like a fight primarily because we don't have a whole lot of weapons at the Capitol. And we don't have a whole lot of weapons at the Capitol because some of us sat out this past election. We're going to get that out of the way and know fully why we are where we are now. When Rep. Walters and I enter that Capitol building on any day to conduct business, we enter it where there are supermajorities. And a supermajority in the House, a supermajority in the Senate, and then the governor's mansion. So all the branches are working together for one purpose, and that is their purpose. It's not a whole lot of legislation or legislating that is going on that is centered around the taxpayers of the state of Louisiana. Lots of control by special interests, lots of control by an agenda that we sort of told everybody about during the presidential election. Project 2025. Louisiana didn't wait for the new president to take office to start implementing parts of the 2025, Project 2025. So I want everyone to sort of level set and understand what's happening. We're fighting, and our role is exactly what I know the NAACP has said at the time. Whatever it is that we as a caucus, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Black Caucus, whatever it is that we cannot legislate, we are committed to litigating on behalf of our people. Key, judge by the work that we can get done, judge by the fights that we are in, because it is an unfair fight. It's hard to beat a supermajority. I tell you that for one particular reason. They got everything they wanted in these 4 proposals. They didn't really need our participation because they got a supermajority, right? How this wording is dictated by the supermajority. Much of what you see is worded, hey, Senator, is worded to confuse you. They give you tidbits of things that sound good, but when you get into the weeds, which we intend to do tonight, they don't do good for the average citizens in the state of Louisiana. Looking forward to further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Representative Walters, you want to give your take on what it looked like getting to words on paper?
I will. Thank you, Sarah Wheatley. So it looks like money and power. Money and power. So if it's not about the money, it's about the power. So when we see amendments such as creating new courts for our state, it's about money and power. When we see bill amendments such as making sure that juveniles can go to adult prison, it's about money and power. And so none of this serves our people as we would like for it to. And so the process looks like, how can I further marginalize the people of Louisiana? Because everything that's proposed in here, it will benefit either those who have a plan to be wealthy this year, or they're already wealthy now. And we found out in the tax session that all a person under 45 needs to make is $110,000 to be in the top 10% tax bracket of this state. So it looks like money and it looks like power. And Rep. LaFleur is very correct. It looks like a fight, and that's every day. Thank you.
Senator Duplessis, you joined us a little late and we were aware, so I'm not tapping you on the hand for that. I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And when everybody introduced themselves, I asked them to provide one thing. I know you probably have a long list, but one thing on your list of items that will come up in the legislature this year in the state of Louisiana that our community should follow. And I know it's a lot going on. It's hard to come up with one, but if you had to give us an assignment to say, pay special attention to this, what is that one thing?
Good evening, and thank you all for having me be a part of this important conversation. I do apologize for being late. I had a neighborhood association meeting that I was also committed to at the same time, and I do apologize. But it is difficult to list just one item. I joined at the end of my sister, Representative LaFleur, when she was giving her powerful comments, and the great, powerful Rep. Joy Walters, just 2 warriors over there in the House, stating all facts. Everything they said is just factual, okay? So we just have to emphasize and understand the seriousness of this. Now, I'm talking to a group of people who've set aside time on their evening to listen to what we have to say. I'm not even really talking to y'all, quite honestly. I'm talking to the people who are not here tonight. So that's the part that we're missing, and that's the part that we have to emphasize. For me, I'm going to do everything that I can this upcoming legislative session to focus on the issue of insurance affordability. Now, I'm prioritizing that because I serve on Senate insurance. I'm prioritizing that because that is an issue that affects all of us, regardless of region, regardless of race, regardless of political party. And I believe it's an issue that we can actually get some traction on because it's somewhat out of the fray of the day-to-day uh, party politics, culture war, divisive issues that have been pushed by this administration and the supermajority that we're up there fighting against every day. Now, I'm obviously going to be getting pulled into a lot of fights, trying to fight against a lot of the bad stuff that's going to be coming. We know that that's coming. But in terms of what I'm going to be pushing and what I'm asking everybody on this call to talk to your respective communities about, to talk to your constituents or your groups about, those people who are not on this call tonight, is to understand the importance of paying attention to what's going on around insurance because we're all impacted by that. All right. It's unaffordable. It's a crisis on the housing side and on the auto side. So I have a few things that I'm gonna be working on. It is a fiscal session, so we're gonna be limited in terms of what we can bring. 5 general bills, not to get into too much of the weeds, but that's just some introductory comments that I have in terms of what I'm going to be working on around trying to address the insurance crisis in our state because our communities, even though wealthy people are impacted by it, our people are impacted the most by this. And it's a true crisis, and it's forcing people, in many cases, to go uninsured, which is truly problematic. So I have a few pieces of legislation that I'll be working on with respect to that, but you only gave me one, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, we can definitely set up a second opportunity to have some of these discussions. It sounds like there's some key topics that I think we need our community to be informed about, and we'll
Yes.
talk about how we continue. But tonight we specifically want to make sure people are prepared for the election on the 29th. So
Mhm.
let's start with the first proposed amendment, and I'll have to say, when I read the summary, it sounds harmless. So I'll start by reading the summary because I don't want to read all the legalese, but I think that will give you an opportunity to then tell us what's under the hood. So the summary that was prepared says, "Do you support an amendment granting Louisiana Supreme Court jurisdiction to discipline out-of-state lawyers for unethical legal practices in the state of Louisiana, and to grant the legislature the authority to establish trial courts of limited and specialized jurisdiction." So I will open the floor for the masterminds to now tell us what that really means and what's not in the summary that we should know. Who wants to start?
Because that started in the Senate, I'm gonna go ahead and take a little senatorial privilege on that one.
Okay.
And you look, you hit the nail on the head with your first comment about how the summary it seems harmless, right? That's intentional. That thing was broken up into 2 parts. You read the first part, which most people are going to do. You say, give the Supreme Court more authority to sanction out-of-state lawyers. We know of scenarios where there were some out-of-state lawyers who did some things in Louisiana that were harmful. Who wouldn't agree with that, right? So that was the misleading part of it. The real amendment that they're trying to do is to give the legislature, the body that Rep. Walter serves in, the body that Rep. LaFleur serves in, the body I serve in, the ability to create these specialized courts. Now, here's the thing we all have to understand. We already have specialized courts in Louisiana. So when the bill author came to the floor with this bill, the first question I asked was, who asked for this? Who asked for this? Because the judges didn't ask for it. I didn't have any judges come to me saying we need to create some new courts. Before I ran for the legislature, I worked at the Louisiana Supreme Court, and I was staff counsel to the Judicial Council. So anytime there was a need for a new judgeship or a new court, there was a process where you went to the Supreme Court, you stated your reasons, you stated your rationale, you said, we need this new court for X reasons. You got some big time litigation going on in a particular parish. We need some supporting judges down here. They didn't do any of that. No, look. And here's the most flagrant part about this bill. And I have, well, there's two parts. Another part that's flagrant is that not only did the judges not ask for this, but this is in direct contravention with the whole effort right now to shrink the courts. So for the past, I mean, since I was at the Supreme Court going back to 2013, 2014, there's been an effort to try to downsize the courts, to try to minimize judges, particularly black judges, because Louisiana has the most black judges in the country, but black judges in New Orleans and in East Baton Rouge. So that is an effort that's been going on for many, many years. So now we're talking about creating more courts. So how do those two things go together, right? The big part that you really just need to look at, the second part of that is look at Jackson, Mississippi, and what took place there. We have powers, going to Rep. Walters' point. This is not a money play. This is a power play, and this will give the legislature the ability to create their own court system. And these specialized courts, when I asked, okay, what kind of, can you tell me what we're going to get? They couldn't provide anything. So we're going to have a whole constitutional amendment where we don't even know, because there's no companion legislation. We don't even know what the specifics of what this court is going to do. It's a dead giveaway. Extremely concerning. This is a very dangerous bill. I'm telling you, because it's literally, it can upend the entire court system in the state of Louisiana. And I'm not exaggerating.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask just in case I'm wrong. Have they specified what courts they want to create? Or is
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, indeed.
This amendment, Senator, is one of those trust me amendments.
That's right.
And I don't know why voters would do that, because you often tell us you don't trust politicians, not even us good ones, right? But let's be real. The senator gave you the two areas that this amendment attacks. The first one, it goes to make you feel all good. And yes, we want to be able to sanction, be able to discipline out-of-state attorneys who are bad actors. Guess what? We can do that.
Right.
We don't need an amendment to do something that is already able to be done. So when you talk to Pookie and everybody else, tell them we don't need this because we can already do this. And when we talk about the special courts, Louisiana has. Now, I did my research. You're going to see me going all over the place here because I want to give you facts. I don't want any of us to walk away from here not knowing facts. Louisiana has more judges per capita than any other state. Now, remember, these are the same folk that say we got too many judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's code for we got too many black judges. Let's be real, especially in EBR and New Orleans and our bigger cities. More judges per capita than any other states. The senator already told you this was unnecessary, and it's unnecessary because we can already create these districts. We have a process that you go through. That's what the Judicial Commission is for. There is study, and it takes a minute. It's not on the whim. You've got to have all this data to show that it's going to come before the Judiciary Committee where we kind of go back and ask the questions about that. We don't need this amendment to continue to, one, create specialty courts. We already have that. And I don't know why the fear, I do know why they want this in the Constitution, because it cements the power and the money grab, right? Rep. Walters, it cements that if it's in the Constitution, because if we wanted to, as a legislature, to create these courts, we can do that. And we told you a big buzz. All three of us said in our talk to you very early on is that we're in a situation where there's a supermajority. So why are you afraid not to draft a bill that would do what you want it to do? You got the numbers. You can get it out the House, you can get it out the Senate, and the governor will sign it for you, but you want to dismantle the Constitution.
Right.
So,
be alert.
Can I just kind of repeat what I think I just heard? If they put this in the Constitution, it stands until we do another constitutional amendment.
Correct.
It pass it in the legislature, and if the nature of the House and the Senate changed, you could change it in the legislature without going into the Constitution. Is that what I heard?
So
Okay.
I go back
Very
to you.
important because
Why we messing with the Constitution when you got a super majority?
right, because it's hard to change the Constitution if you don't have a supermajority.
Right.
So if the deck wasn't stacked the way it is now, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
And don't let them get you on that code language that they use when they say it takes a 2/3 majority. I said like that everything passed out the legislature is usually with a 2/3 majority because that's what y'all have and y'all
That's
all
what they
vote
got.
party lines. So that is when they say, oh, it's a high standard, it's really not that high in the legislature.
Right. That's why we need you guys to always think about the damage a supermajority can do.
Exactly. And we hear all the time, we don't want to grow government. We don't want to grow government. But here we are trying to grow the judiciary system. And if we created a bill to come up with a specialty legislator, because we are due 6 seats in the House and 3 more seats in the Senate. Oh, I mean, it would be an all-out war in that legislator. But here we are trying to overreach when it comes to our Supreme Court being able to already do a function. And that's really what we've been seeing is the dubbing down and the conflation of situations and issues that may really not even exist. And so it's problematic big time. And so but I think everybody knows that I'm not voting for that.
So a question came up in the chat, and the question is, if the amendment passes, would the judges be appointed or elected?
That part wasn't specified. They left it vague. They didn't answer that question. When we asked that question during session, they didn't say. So that's going to have to be determined through legislation. This amendment is so broad, they left it open. So we don't know if it's going to be if they're going to be appointed or elected. We don't know if the legislature can create a court in Baton Rouge, Monroe, Shreveport. You could have a judge from one of those areas making decisions on a matter in New Orleans. You know, these are all questions we don't know the answer to.
And they attempt, Senator, to answer the question with more vagueness in Amendment 4, right?
Yes.
That's
yes.
So you got
oh yeah.
That's their bookends, people.
That's
Amendment
right.
1
That's
and
right.
Amendment 4, they
Yep.
go together. So we'll get to Amendment 4 if you want, or we can jump into it now, Senator. Whatever works, but it's
Yeah.
the commandment.
You're right.
And it
They're
determines-
connected.
They are so
They are
connected. And they determine how these new judges, these new courts are going to be created, how they're going to be elected. 1 and 4. Why not make it 1 and 2? You know, so we can make sure that the people understand that they go together.
Okay, so why don't we go to 4, because it sounds like that those tie together. So I'll read once again the summary, because again the summary sounds pretty harmless. And it says, do you support an amendment to provide for the use of the earliest election date to fill judiciary vacancies? So you mentioned that those two were connected, so I'll start with the senator once again. Just kind of hear why
number one, I think it's unnecessary. Okay. It's not necessary. That's the first thing. But again, it does not address the earlier question of, do these judges get appointed? Do these judges get elected? That amendment is so narrow in terms of its scope and application, where serving in the body that I serve in, I have to be distrusting of it, because there's no other reason that you would want to do an entire constitutional amendment just to be able to give the Supreme Court this ability to move up an election day. Like it just doesn't pass the smell test for me, especially after they couldn't answer the questions on number 1. So I think it's all part of a larger scheme to pick the judges that they want when they're able to create these specialty courts. Now, that's my belief. And I just don't think that a good enough explanation was given on 4 as to why we had to amend the entire Constitution to be able to move up an election date here and there.
Yeah,
So
moving up election dates, which this will give them that opportunity to do that. It disadvantages a lot of us because those are usually short elections. They're quick elections. And if we can't engage folk to go vote for governor, you think we can get enough people out to help us decide who the judges are that are closer to us?
Yeah, a quick election is like, yeah, let's just go ahead and get that one on the ballot before we even knew there was an election.
Yeah. And trust that's the map, because that we've seen it happen. I mean, I think about there is going to be an election to fill the House seat that is now vacated by two of our members. That could have been a quick election. It's not. It's an election that takes place after we gavel in and out. No, not out. I think that they'll be able to come in. I think it's at the 7th is that election. You can correct me, Senator. But think about that. If it were I would argue for a quick election on that end so that seat, someone's in it and someone is voting for that district. Well, that's not going to happen because they get to decide when. And do we really want to give them that sort of power?
okay, so I think we're keeping up with the questions. Michelle, are there any questions out there that we want to kind of bring to the panel right now?
A few that we've answered throughout the discussion, but one I want to go back to from Amendment 1, and it stated, if Amendment 1 passes, would the judges be elected or appointed?
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I think the senator kind of.
Yeah, it hasn't been determined or specified. Those were one of the questions we tried to vet during the session when the bill was being debated, but they wouldn't give us that answer.
Okay, so to summarize what I think we've heard so far is Amendment 1 says, let us create specialty courts with no details associated with that. No details on what specialty means, what the topics will be, where they will be, how the judges will be selected. So it is a open-ended, trust me. And
just trust me. It's like a blank check. Just give me the power and we'll figure it out once we got to get there first. That's literally what they were saying. Let us get there and then we'll figure it out. They talked about business courts and all of this stuff. No, there's literally, I said, okay, did Lobby ask for this? Nobody, they're the business group. They didn't ask for it. No judges asked for it. So yeah, just trust us. We're going to change the Constitution. Then we'll let you know what kind of court we need.
And then Amendment 4 says, let us do it as quickly as we wish to do it.
Yeah. And again, it would only apply in very narrow instances. And here's the other reason why. Look, if you can't find a good reason to vote against it, let me give you a good reason to vote against it. Because from an electoral standpoint, it's easier to tell our community just vote no on all of them than when we try to get into this whole thing about, well, vote yes on this. And this Amendment 4 is so insignificant in my opinion. But the reasons I think they're not good reasons, but for whatever positive reasons they try to argue, they don't outweigh the need for us to just vote all of these down. So 1, 2, and 3 are so bad that in order just for us to Foe has to go with the rest of them.
Let me jump in too, if I may. The Supreme Court has always had the authority to fill a vacancy on any court at any time. They have that authority.
That's what they do already.
Yeah, yep. There's no need, absolutely no need to hurry up to get a judge elected to fill that seat, except for to keep control of power.
That's it.
Judges have so much power, so they can run rampant with their with all the stuff that they want to do. It's a low down state. I'm like the senator. I wouldn't trust it. No, I'm gonna vote no anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not forget when we leave here, and I agree with you, Senator. Some of this getting in the weeds stuff, this is wonderful for this, but we are talking to some informed voters.
Right.
But when we are not talking to informed voters, let's keep it real simple. Vote no on all 4.
Yeah, straight up. That's where, because when you just nailed it, Rep.
Well, I think even some of those that are not on the call would appreciate the fact that we don't need any more courts. So
yeah.
I think we could make that a point. So I think we're good on 1 and 4. I'd like to go back to 2. And once again, I'll start with the summary that is, I'm sure is very misleading because the actual bill itself is almost a page and the summary is 3 sentences. So I'm sure it's a lot there. So I'll just read the summary, which says, do you support an amendment to revise Article 7 of the Constitution of Louisiana, including revisions to lower the maximum rate of income tax, increase income tax deductions for citizens over 65, provide a government growth limit, modify operation of certain constitutional funds, provide for property tax exemptions retaining the homestead exemption and exemption for religious organizations, provide a permanent teacher salary increase by requiring a surplus payment to the teacher retirement debt, and make other modifications. So it seems like they sprinkle some good things in there that people would automatically say, yes, let's give the teachers a raise. Yes, let's lower taxes. So I'll open the floor once again for you to help us understand what's in the legal words versus the summary.
Rep. LaFleur, former revenue, this started in the House. Lead us.
Ooh, this is smoke and mirrors, y'all.
Yeah.
Don't go out there voting for stuff because they say they're going to give you a raise. The money is not going to be there. And let's be clear, the opportunity to give teachers a pay raise, 8 years in the making, and now you want to connect it to this. Let's get into some of these details, and I'm going to be sharing different resources and different sources that I do want to say this to you. I know they are on. If you have not gone on the website for the Power Coalition and looked at all these amendments, the fors and against, that's a trip worth taking. PAR's guide is a trip worth taking because you get that information. But let's look at amendment number 2, y'all. It's so bad. Woody Jenkins is not for it. I'm like, are we gonna hold hands and go to this courthouse together on Wednesday? Because there's a suit that says this amendment is not constitutional. It gets heard on Wednesday. There are a group of churches that are against this because this impacts them as well. But when we're on the same side as Woody Jenkins, it's time to step up and start thinking, people. So it changes some of our rules. What gets you is this also, is that you're going to say, oh, it lowers my income tax rate. It's lowering the income tax rate for the folk that's out there in the higher brackets. And when that happens, there is going to be less money to take care of the citizens of this state. It eliminates several of the protected K through 12 education funds, eliminates, and does not guarantee. That's the thing. You see this language, there's nothing in any of this that guarantees for the teachers a pay raise. And if I overstep, Senator, that's what you're here for this evening. I can get excited, right?
You got it.
It removes the constitutional protection for the property tax exemptions that our nonprofits now have, our hospitals, our schools, our unions, the good old social aid and pleasure clubs that like to throw beads in NOLA, those, right? And it curtails, and the curtail, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, it means dial back, but it dials back on the constitutional, the tax exemptions that we have for our religious institutions. And they get you on that because what they want you to think about are those mega preachers and the amount of money that they bring in, right? So you, in your mind, you start to think, oh, we're dialing back on mega preachers. No, because guess what? They got enough lawyers to keep them from paying property tax on their personal side. Remember that. There's a spending limit on essential services like education and healthcare that's baked in. Any state budget surplus would have to be sent for their pet projects. Can I say that, Senator? Those one-time projects that if you play the game well enough, you may be able to get some. But it's not that many Dems that can do that because we're not really ready to sell souls just yet. The revenue, the state revenue stabilization funds, it's going to shift funds from there. We built that fund so that in rainy days, in tough times, we would have something to pull from. It's got a lot of money in there now. So what it is, oh, let's do a grab, right? Let's do it. That sounds like a robbery to me, Senator. It changes and it deletes a fund that supports infant mortality. It's a lot of things that actually matter. It takes what I didn't understand as related to this are the people who showed up and testified and didn't say anything, or the ones that sat in the room and let these things get out of committee, get off the floor, and never sent a note. They send notes on everything else. How do you not, on a local level, not send notes, not talk to us about this? Because this is going to impact locals and how they collect their sales tax, right? All of this, we could do Amendment 2 sort of all night. It is a lot in Amendment 2. Understand that it is a drastic change to our tax code. It's a drastic change to how we spend and allocate money in this state. And it is not something, it is another one of those things where they're saying, trust me, I'll do right by you. Well, I'm a year in and I'm waiting to see the I'll do right by you as it relates to those who don't wear the red or communities that are disenfranchised and marginalized. I'll flip this back to you, Senator. And
you got it. Rep Joy, you got any thoughts on this one?
When I read this bill, the only thing that I can think of is the Department of Government Efficiency. Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, Elon Musk. And so I get all of my information and insight on this bill when it was going through the channels from Rep LaFleur. And so all I can say is this is Doge all day. This is Doge in the flesh. So for me, again, personally, it is a no. I mean, even when it comes to the teacher pay raise, it's the pomp and circumstance of, oh, this is teacher pay raise, this is teacher pay raise, but it's actually not. It's misleading. And so, nevertheless, I mean, our colleague Rep LaFleur covered everything, and so I'm just going to hush and say that when you think of this amendment, you think Doge.
I love that. I love that because the one thing that we're here tonight to do is put it at a level where our constituents can understand. I start with the no on all four. Amendment 2 is Doge in Louisiana, so we can remember those sort of things. I did want to share this that I read that I thought, that it's an impactful statement. And it said the Constitution is cluttered with too much tax specificity that would be better for state law, be left to state law. Lowering the cap on the income tax and adding an enhanced deduction for senior citizens into this document, and listen to me and lean in with me, because this is the wording I want you to understand, is designed only to what? Win amendment passage. The way this is written is designed for you to not get into the weeds and understand the impact. So what's going to happen? If it passes, every one of us will be impacted. The same sort of things that we're feeling as a result of Doge, people getting firing and all of this. And we're like, oh my God, I didn't know he'd move so fast. Well, pass Amendment 2 and Louisiana is going to be spent just like DC. And we used to be free from that DC politics, but it's here to stay now.
Right.
Okay, so I think we learned a lot. Michelle, I'll check in to see what questions you see in the chat.
There was only one related to Amendment 2, since we're there right now. It said, will it impact other statutory funds? That was the only one specifically related to Amendment 2.
Yes, it will. So, couple of things. This bill is 115 pages long. I mean, 115 pages long. Section 7 of the Constitution is the largest portion of our Constitution. The magnitude and the gravity of this amendment, I don't know that anybody really fully understands it, because you probably have some tax law professors at LSU and Southern that are still unpacking this thing. This thing is serious. Um, there are several exemptions that are in the Constitution that will be moved to statute as a result of this amendment. One that I actually helped pass just last year for first responders. You know, those are in the Constitution for a reason. And the question as to whether or not it will impact statutory, I think it was taxes. Yes, it will. There are so many funds that are going to be impacted by this amendment change that we'd be here all night discussing it.
And we would be, but this was, who am I looking at? Oh, this was, I think PAR, and their summary for if you vote against, I thought was really good. Those trust funds that we were talking about that get out of the way, it says that if you vote against this is what you're saying, that you want to maintain the 3 education trust funds and continue to distribute their investment earnings for public school and higher education programs. If you vote for this thing, you're just opening up the bank and letting them rob public school and higher education programs with no guarantees that they tell you that to give us this means you're going to get a permanent teacher pay raise.
So just for my own education, at one time in the state of Louisiana, if there was a budget deficit, there were only 2 places we could cut the money, and that was Health and Human Services and Education. Is that still our practice?
That's still the case.
Right. So we're already robbing education whenever we don't have enough money.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to say, take the education fund and do with it as you wish.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure. So I think what I hear, and I think Representative Walters kind of summed it up a little bit. This is kind of Doge Louisiana style, but it's really a tax code to make the rich richer, and to take that off of the backs of the Louisiana citizens wherever they can, whether it's education, whether it's taxing our nonprofits and churches differently, but it's really more money in the hands of the rich at the expense of whoever has to pay that price.
That's always the case here, unfortunately. Path of least resistance, you know, that's where we are.
And if I may jump in, you know, when they started putting a whole lot of stuff in these bills, this bill is over 100 pages long, so nobody would want to take the time to read it. But then there's some things that jump language like education, healthcare. Those things we should always be aware of, because when education and healthcare, amongst other things, affect us. When they want to take the dedicated funds from those two, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble. So also, if this bill here deals with local government, the local municipalities can't touch the taxes now, because they're taking that away from them, because they don't want some municipalities like EBR and I guess New Orleans and all of the Black local municipalities to have anything to do with the money that comes in, because they want to take that money and do what they want to do, make their friends and them and their friends rich to the detriment of people like us. So I always have to be leery. When they put stuff together, I'm always voting no for them, because they need to have a fight.
Okay, and what I will say is, I've just always believed, and this is a personal belief, that it's dangerous when you open up your Constitution. That we have so many other tools
Most definitely.
Of being able to have intelligent dialogue in the legislature. But when you open up your Constitution, you're kind of changing things in a permanent and drastic fashion. And it forces out the dialogue, and it takes really a voice from our community and our representatives. So I'm always very leery when we say, okay, let's open up the Constitution and change it forever. Okay, if there are no other questions in the chat on 2, let's go to item number 3. And I'll start with the same, reading the summary that I have in front of me. And it says, do you support an amendment to provide the legislature the authority to determine which felony crimes, when committed by a person under the age of 17, may be transferred for criminal prosecution as an adult? So that's always a big topic. Now they want to treat youth like adults. So I'll open the floor. I'm not sure if this one started in the House or the Senate. Joy, you want to take the lead on this one and tell us kind of the history on it and where we should stand on this one as well.
Sure. So I'm on the Criminal Justice Committee, and then my vice chair, she's here as well, and will elaborate on any points that that I don't get to. So I actually did extensive research to see the intent behind this bill and also the history behind this bill. And so before an amendment ever came to us to vote on, Chair Villio, she authored a bill to add armed robbery committed with, robbery committed with a firearm to the Constitution. And for some reason, it just kind of kept being pulled year after year. Well, it's in the Children's Code, but it is not in the Constitution. And of course, if you try to put something like that in the Constitution, you have to have the vote of the people. And so essentially, there's a case that it came out of Jefferson Parish, where a young man, his sentence was reduced. They kept appealing, and a former Supreme Court justice at the time, Judge Genovese, he stated that the legislature overreached its constitutional authority when it added that specific item there. And so I just thought, well, if it overreached its constitutional authority then what makes us able to put together a comparable list now, especially with this intense spirit of we just got to lock up everybody that we can, or we just got to make money off of everybody's kids, and 17-year-olds should be rehabilitated so that eventually they can become productive citizens of society. Possibly they were already productive citizens of society and just got swayed away. So we don't need to create something essentially that's already there in the Children's Code, and there is an extensive list that is already in the Constitution.
Okay. Senator, you want to comment on that one as well?
Yes, sorry I had to jump off for a second. I know Rep. Joy and Rep. LaFleur are on the front lines on all matters criminal justice. This is another bill that originated in the Senate, had some passionate debate on it. This amendment really speaks for itself, and I think it's very telling of where we are as a state, and that's not a good place. This is right up there with the move to execute people by means of suffocation through gas. Like, to me, this is what I liken it to, because it's taking us backwards. We just raised the age. So now we're just one of 4 states in the country where 17-year-olds are automatically charged as adult, regardless of the crime. But now we need to go even further, based on a few of my colleagues who are saying that we got to undo the Constitution that already has 16 enumerated crimes that the people voted on. We're going to undo that to give the legislature the ability to add these additional crimes that they also couldn't tell us what they were. So when I asked, okay, if we need to charge young people between the ages of 15 and 17, I'm sorry, 14, 15, and 16 as adults, which DAs already have the discretion to do, if there's a crime that's not already listed in the Constitution, how about we just add it? Let the people decide. I said, well, what crime are we talking about? Well, you know, there's these juveniles that are doing these things. Couldn't get a clear answer. This bill is deeply troubling to me personally, just in terms of how I feel about our juvenile justice system in this, not just this state, but in this country. This one is bad, very bad. But here's my concern. And there's probably some people on this call tonight that disagree with me, because all of us have the moment where we're saying, you know, they want to do the crime, they want to do the adult crime, they need to do the adult time. And that's just a narrative that unfortunately has not been limited just to the supermajority. That's something that's also in our community, and we need to be honest about that. So the problem, though, is, and there's several problems, is that this in no way is going to help rehabilitate young people, which it should be always be the goal when we're talking about young people, because anybody under the age of 18 is a young person. I mean, the brain isn't fully developed until 25. At least that's what the Supreme Court said. So this is a huge step backwards, and to make this permanent in the Constitution is going to really hurt our state. These facilities are not equipped to hold young people. They already can't. They have to keep young people under the age of 18 separate from adults. These local jails don't have the resources to house them. And going back to a point earlier, Rep. Walters, she really hit it on the head. She said money or power. This is a little bit of both too. I really believe this is a money play. And there's this idea that we're going to save money as a state by housing, because it costs more to house young people. So now they're just going to put more young people in adult prison as a way to save money. And but I think we're going to suffer more in so many ways that it's really going to be hard to measure. So this is a horrible amendment, and I pray that we as a state can rise above this.
Yeah, if this amendment passes, it is a blank check to the supermajority. You take this out the Constitution, which at least has a few guardrails in place where there is a listing of what can happen. You say you want me to take that listing, upend it, and then turn it back over to a supermajority whose goal it is to lock our children up, as many as they can. It ain't rehabilitation, because bills have been filed and money has been requested to do just that. And it's always a no. When we talk about these committees and being at the Capitol, there's nothing, people, that the supermajority wants if you give them this that ain't getting out of committee. Right. Why you say that? Because I've been there long enough to watch and see it. We don't have the numbers on the committee to stop. What we do is make records. So we don't, you bring, this passes, there's a new crime that you want to establish. You got to bring it before the Criminal Justice Committee. It's getting out. Because they have the numbers. So it gets out, it gets on the floor, it gets out there because they have the numbers, crosses over to you, Senator. It's getting out there.
Yep.
So it really is a blank check to charge juveniles. You look at that list, it's expansive enough. We don't need to add. Leave it the way it is. And I'm going to say this. Passing these amendments really lets them off. They don't have to file bills, argue, and come before you in a town hall meeting, explain to you why they filed a bill and what the impact was, because now you give them, well, they passed it. We're just doing what the people told us to do. They passed the amendments. Don't give them that.
Let me jump in if I may. And so you have to follow. You're right. It's always about power and money. With these fools in Louisiana, it's always about power and the money. And so when the governor took office, I think the previous governor left a $350 million surplus. He immediately took that money, put it over to Department of Corrections. They started building jails immediately. They don't build jails to leave them open and vacant. They build them to house people. Most of the jails now are for profit, and they guaranteed that those jails would be filled, or at least 70, 80% capacity. With who? Us. Once they get education, you know, lack of education leads to what? Criminal behavior. They're connected. And so the club closed all the schools down, so all the young men and young women can go out and commit crime, so we can put them all in jail. The feds has a rule, a law that says that you cannot mix juveniles and adults. I promise you, because of the president in office now and Congress, they will soon eliminate that loop so that you'll be able to keep juveniles and adults together. They all interrelated. We have to, at all costs, fight this, because a sure way to eliminate the Black race is through the Black male. If they put all the Black boys in jail, there is nobody out here left to continue the race. We have to. Our lives, our future depends on it. I promise you it is.
And I'll add this, Mr. President. I know a few years ago when we all watched the When They See Us, and it impacted us in ways that a lot of us are still sort of dealing with. But you saw what happens in that when we put children in facilities with adults. It's never a good ending for the child, for the community. Remember that Amendment 3 is a blank check to put our children in prisons. DAs can already charge what they want to charge.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Sarah from the Power Coalition if you have any comments you want to add. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I know you're on the front line as well, trying to educate the community. So, any comments?
Yeah, hi everyone. Sarah Mojla. I'm actually the director of Vera Louisiana and working with Power Coalition and Liberty and Dignity Coalition to lead some of the campaign charge on No on 3. I think that our senator and representatives really hit the nail on the head with everything that they've been talking about. Something that I really wanted to raise for people, because I saw some questions in the chat about crime, and as a person who, I was a teacher, I'm a mom, I have worked on criminal justice reform for a really long time, and really what I want to note for people is that we should be really interested in preventing crime. We should be interested in making sure that our communities are safe, and none of these amendments do that. Amendment 3 is not going to prevent horrible things from happening. Horrible things do happen, and the way that we have to prevent them is to invest in education and healthcare. And you've just heard all of the ways that we want to defund those things, right, in order to, build more jail beds and do all of these things. And so again, you heard all of the in-depth stuff here. I'm not adding too much more, except to say that it's really simple. It's no on them all. And we're not, we can't parse out anything that is good enough for any of these things to be passed. And I think I do want to go back, because again, I know in our communities, people are always thinking about, how do we deal with crime? You hear the news about crime, everywhere, and New Orleans is so big and bad and scary and all of those things. I was raised in New Orleans. I live here in New Orleans. And we know that actually crime is going down. And even though in some communities where we have had disinvestments and disenfranchisement, it looks worse. And so that's why we bring it back to how to do crime prevention and how to have safe and thriving communities, is to actually fund the things that prevent that. And that is education, healthcare, social services, disaster relief, infrastructure, insurance, all of those things, right? And so just throwing that out there to remind people that these don't prevent crime. They actually defund the systems that we need in order to prevent crime. And because of that, we're voting no on every single thing. I can add some things in the chat, but I just want to leave it right there.
Yeah, the question is, and thank you, Sarah, you get it. I mean, y'all, if you're on the call, you likely get it. the question that we all have to ask ourselves is things like, where does it stop? Where does it end? Are we really going to do this? Like, is this what it's come to? Is what it's come to? It's not working. And it's shameful that we continue to go down this path. Okay, so after they pass this, then they're going to say, now we can get them all in adult. You know what? We just need to just put all young people. I mean, don't even matter. 12, 13, 11, 10, 9. Why even distinguish? Why distinguish? I believe that's what this amendment says, that there shouldn't be no difference between adults and juveniles.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead. So
Go ahead.
sorry.
I'm just amening my colleague.
I know. I think so. It's so interesting too. And something that I just wanted to like just piggyback on what the senator said. This is an end run around the Constitutional Convention that failed. Our representatives and senator helped that big constitutional convention that everyone kept hearing about, that they wanted to rewrite the Constitution in a couple of weeks. This is all an end run. So you're going to see more constitutional amendments. You're going to see more little end runs and little ways to like get more power, get more money, shuffle, deal with people in this way, and, try and separate the haves from the have-nots. You're going to see more of that because they couldn't get the support for a constitutional convention. And so this is the thing that they're going to try and do. And so really for almost every single constitutional amendment that comes out, you're going to have to say no. And they have to see that, oh no, we actually have to, we cannot just legislate and we cannot just make laws for only some of the people while trying to, bulldoze and oppress the rest of the people. And so that is also why I want to just I just wanted to go in there again to say it's really, really important, because this is how you show your power, and this is how you keep your community safe, and this is how you build a thriving community, which leads to safety too.
Okay, I just have to say I feel well informed now. I knew I would learn a lot tonight, but I am just overwhelmed by the knowledge of the panel. I'd have to personally say thank you to each one of you for being on the front line. And I know we in our generation thought that the battle was in a good place. I don't think we thought it was over, but it's almost like we've been backed up in time, and we find ourselves in the positions that our parents were in, 40, 50 years ago, having to fight for just basic rights. I think in summary, we get it. Just no to all four. And we're going to make that simple for our family, friends, our communities, our church members. If we're asked why, we now have some answers on why. And I think that we see a theme. And to me, the theme is permanent change, which is the vehicle. That's why they're using the Constitution versus the legislative floor, because if they get it in the Constitution, it's permanent and it carries beyond the supermajority that they have now. We see a takeaway. Whether it's take our children and put them in prison, take funding from our organizations and our communities through tax cuts, moving money around as they will. We see an attack on our ability to educate our community and our children, be it early education or K through 12. We see our pockets being hit with insurance dollars, so the money we have will not go as far. And I agree. I think it was Representative Joy that said this is kind of Doge on steroids in Louisiana. And I can tell you, a person that spent 30 years in Washington, I've become a therapist for my friends that are still there. So I get calls every morning, almost at 6 o'clock, just kind of encouraging them and strategizing in different ways. We want to make sure that we tell everybody that we kind of interact with, be it in our community or in other communities, that these things are not good for the state of Louisiana. I don't mind the legislature having a debate, but have that debate. Don't go to the Constitution and then, you change it and you really take away our voice, be it as a voter or our voice, through our legislative representatives. So I will ask our president if she has some further comments. And Michelle, I'll go to you just in case there's anything else that I need to do before we wrap up.
Just one last question besides this, and thank you all again, our panelists. Thank you for joining us, and for everyone that has been. I love to see the chat moving. You all have been extremely interactive tonight, and we appreciate you. One of the things that I know I feel a lot more informed, as we've constantly said, it has been an awesome panel and an awesome discussion. But one of the things, how do we translate this into votes? So one of the questions specifically was, how do we actually get people to show up in large numbers? We can get them to do it for parades and second lines, but we can't get them to do it when it comes to the polls. So if there's just one thing that anybody wanted to speak to, how do we translate this into votes?
I'm the coordinator for Baton Rouge with the Liberty and Dignity Coalition. I would say that the way that we target voter engagement is that we have to make sure that we are using language that is appropriate in ways that they can understand it. Oftentimes what happens is that we enter into these conversations and the verbiage isn't one that they're able to quite relate to. And so I really appreciate this evening how the utilization of this plain speech to help drive these things home. I think the core of voter engagement and voter activation is making sure that we are talking to them about the things that they care about directly. I think the thing that we can all agree on that really hones in the focus is that this is a fight for the state of Louisiana, for the soul, and we are the last line of defense now. In Louisiana, it's on us. And I believe that we all have a moral, a social, and a spiritual responsibility to stand and be counted in this moment. They were talking about literally taking our children away from them, locking them away. And when they speak about them being housed separately, what they're really talking about is solitary confinement. Imagine what that would look like for your 13-year-old, your 14-year-old, your 16-year-old. We were to close our eyes and think of the children that we hold dear to us, them being locked away in a cell with no access to the proper services that they need at their age. This completely eliminates any path for rehabilitation because they're going to continue to gut it. And so by speaking to our constituents and speaking to voters and speaking in the communities and speaking in the churches, letting them know the reality of what's happening here. There was a reason why they took their time to slip this in immediately after Mardi Gras. With 3 weeks, this is going to literally change and reshape the future of this state, these 4 amendments. And so we have to be consistent in lifting up these messages, and we have to make sure that we're constantly talking to people. You're not going to win at all of them. One of the things that my pastor tells us all the time as it relates to the work in the community, he says, son, some of us are called to plant, some of us are called to water, but we have to trust God for increase. So we have to trust in our ability to be consistent in our message and to continue to talk to folk and continue to talk to folk and continue to talk to folk. Yes, it gets tiring, but it is the best methods that we have available in order to produce real, actual and tangible change here in the state of Louisiana.
Thank you. So before we start losing people, I'd like to provide a reminder. Early voting starts March 15th. It goes through the 22nd, and the actual election day is March 29th. I'm sure everybody here knows that, but make sure you tell everybody around you. We need everybody to show up. We need everybody to know why we're voting no on all 4. And I think there's some topics coming up later in the year where we may want to continue to have some dialogue. So I will say to the panelists, don't wait for us to call you. If you need us to get an audience together for a specific topic, call us and we will partner, step up and do whatever we have to do because we do know how important it is that our community stays engaged, and that we continue to share information. Dr. Singleton, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am, I am here. And
Okay.
I appreciate this conversation. I love that we have made it plain. That very much needed. And, following the chat as well, I do believe that that was heard. Vote no on all four. And we have the rationale as to why we should vote how we should vote. It's just not going out and saying that. We know why, what is happening with Amendment 1 and 4 and how they're related. Also, the massive amount of information in Amendment 2 and what we're going to do to our young people if Amendment 3 is passed. So I appreciate that. Now, when I go out and early vote next week, when I help my mother fill out her ballot, I know why I'm voting the way that I am voting. So I just want to thank Representative LaFleur, Senator Duplessis, Rep. Waters. I know she looks like she had to leave. Miss, I'm not going to say her last name, Sarah, and Mr. Self as well. Thank you all for joining us and providing, and Mr. McClanahan also, who was with us, who had to leave. You all provided valuable information, and know that we will be reaching out as there are additional information that we want to share throughout the year. Thank you. And thanks to the audience for joining us as well.
Thank y'all for having us. In the New Orleans way, you say just no on all folk, F-O, just it rhymes a little easier. You can drop the R at the end, all right? Or the O-R, you no on all folk.
I like that. We a little proper over
Yeah,
here.
no on
with
all
the
folk.
capital
All
C.
right?
We too proper with it. I get it.
Vanessa started by saying every day was a fight. So we appreciate that. We acknowledge that, and just know that we support you. We love you for being in the fight, and we want you to keep going. All right.
Thank you all for having us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam and Michelle also, and Rashana.
Okay, you're welcome. Signing out, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.